with this great resignation, employers having to rush to fill positions, does, training and safety still take the forefront, or are we rushing those things and having employees in positions where, they might not necessarily have, 100% of the safety and the training that they originally had, or having claims result from those kinds of situations.
Welcome to The Defense Never Rests with Morgan Akins, your monthly dose of uncommon sense about all things legal and some that are not.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this episode of The Defense Never Rests. I'm your host, Meghan Henry, and I'm joined today by my colleague and partner, Lisa Miller. How are you, Lisa?
I'm fine, Meghan. How are you?
Great. I'm so happy you're on with me. I don't think you've been on the podcast in some time. Maybe it was last year on Mother's Day. Was that the last one I had you join me?
Yep. Me and my mom.
Oh, your mom is a sweetheart, though. I loved doing that. We're gonna re-air that probably around Mother's Day because it was such a good podcast.
Oh, good.
But today we don't have your mom on. We are kind of revisiting a comp series that we did. I started doing last year. We tried to have, regular comp themed podcasts, and I decided to bring that back. So today we're joined by Andrea Emmett, who is a work compensation claims consultant at CCMSI. And we're just going to come on. We're going to talk about her and, hot comp issues. So with that, let's bring her in. Good morning, Andrea. Welcome to the Defense Never Rests. How are you this morning?
Thanks. I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so happy that you're joining Lisa and I. We haven't done a comp themed podcast in some time. So thank you for helping us restart our comp series. We were trying to do these at least once a quarter, and then I think we fell off for like 2 quarters. So you've rejuvenated it for me.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So I know you've listened to a few of these podcasts, so you kind of have an idea of how I structure it. And I like to start by, getting to know who's joining me that day and getting to know their story a little bit. So, how did you end up in claims and working on claims? Like, were your parents in insurance, or did you kind of just fall into it?
I just fell into it. I saw the job posting, and I had a lot of things that would appeal to me with, investigating, learning laws, becoming, kind of a workers' comp expert in your area. And, all of those things seem to match up with my personality and kind of the things I enjoyed. And most importantly, being able to help people that really needed help. My family is mostly blue collar. So, being able to help people that are boots to the ground and, working in those kinds of industries, that really appealed to me. So I applied to the job and, went through the process, and, it worked out, and here I am.
So, and some points that you bring up that I think are so key, though, to the industry, one, helping people, because I think that's a misconception with in claims that, people generally think like in claims, you're not here to help.
Right.
And also the investigative aspect, which I think is such in comp claims. And I mean, I do liability work, and the investigative aspect is huge in when you're, researching and defending a claim. So, I think those are 2 like huge skill points that sometimes people don't realize are part of this industry.
Right, for sure. And, and not only that, but just like the strategization behind all of it too. Having to put those pieces and, all those moving parts and making sure you're doing things at the right time. That also is, very appealing to me. I like to strategize and making sure that, I'm handling things appropriately and making sure I'm bringing things to resolution. But, also monitoring those claims that might not be 100%. But, like you said, really trying to help those that really truly need the help, and being, kind of that guide person for them to get them from injured to back to, good as soon as possible. It's a scary world when you don't have a claim before, you haven't been through the process. So explaining things in simple terms and being able to guide them through what could be a very complicated and scary process. That's really what drives me in my claims career is, being able to be that resource for them.
Yeah.
Do you find that, having a family that has a blue collar background helps you kind of empathize with the people that you're that have a claim, so that you can make them feel comfortable to give you the information that you need while you're doing your investigation?
Absolutely. And, just being human, having, kindness for other humans, you can relate to that. You know, it's anybody's father, brother, sister, mother that, has had an injury, and keeping those things in mind when you're talking to people and, it does, you relate to that. You know, that's one thing I've always tried to keep in my mind when I'm helping claimants and trying to explain things to them, trying to get them through the process as easy as possible, try to reduce the stress level. The last thing you want is a stressed out claimant. So, that can create some problems for you and, in handling the claim. So
Yeah.
I think just, treating them like a human and, I think that is just something that has come naturally to me. I think just having that empathy for sure helps with
Yeah.
this kind of job.
And I think empathy is so important. And then but true empathy, not fabricated empathy. Like, I think if your claimant understands that you truly understand, like they see that you truly sympathize and appreciate their position where they're in, you're there to help. I think that shines through, that they feel like they have a partner in a way through the process.
For sure. I agree with that. People can always tell when you're not, being authentic and genuine. So having that natural empathy definitely goes a long way.
Yeah. So you were saying how you came out of college and you found your way into your career in comp as a comp adjuster, and you started at Synergy Comp and you were there for some time. How was your experience there with finding your way in the role? Like, did you have a mentor or someone in that kind of role that kind of groomed you and helped you navigate this new career for you?
For sure. We at that time had the opportunity to train with many people on staff, so several different adjusters. So you would learn how they did things as opposed to another adjuster, and you just kind of found the way that worked for you. But yeah, it was definitely a learning experience. I certainly bumbled through like my first litigated claims. I'm sure people probably wondered what I was talking about. When I'd fire off an email to a defense counsel, they'd probably be like, oh my goodness, what am I dealing with? But it was definitely an experience and a good learning one. I feel, I think we all do that when we start a new job. You have no idea what to expect and you kind of just fake it till you make it. So, but yeah, I definitely experienced that and learned a lot of things along the way. And it was nice to be able to learn from, some tenured employees and learn how they really did things and how to handle things the best way. Especially when a situation could be potentially volatile, being able to learn how they put out those fires and, address the situation and move the claim forward. So, navigating through that was definitely an adventure and, definitely learning the legal aspects of the claims and the case laws and, making sure that you're doing things appropriately per jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Was definitely a learning experience. I can't say enough how much I've learned through, doing claims. It's just been, a constant education process, and not only with in PA, which is like my main jurisdiction, but there's always something new to learn. There's always something new coming out, things to pay attention to, things that are going to affect your claims, rising medical costs, and here we are, we have a pandemic.
Yeah. And that's why you need someone like Lisa. Lisa's the best at like, she always knows what's up and coming in your world. I feel like you're always posting on LinkedIn about something new.
Yeah. Is that what you find the most difficult about dealing with comp, especially if you have multiple jurisdictions, that every jurisdiction is different in terms of with COVID, New Jersey has a presumption, Pennsylvania doesn't, California does. So do you find that difficult if you handle multiple jurisdictions that, you could potentially be dealing with 50 different rules for the same issue?
Yeah, for sure. And, just always asking the questions that are important. If you're all unsure, that's the first thing I'm doing is picking up the phone and asking defense counsel, hey, here's this claim, here's the situation, how is this appropriately handled if I don't know 100%. So, but yeah, it's definitely a challenge trying to keep up with everything, and knowing the rules and regulations definitely of each state and jurisdiction. Some are just wildly different.
It's also that's similar for GL stuff too. I mean, what happens in PA is not exactly the same as what happens in New Jersey or, some of the other jurisdictions. So I think that's something I can certainly appreciate. And I think a lot of other people in claims, any type of claim, can appreciate how it changes as you cross state lines,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
county lines, even to some extent,
Yeah, one of the things I think I most struggle with even today is just, coming from PAs being kind of your main state, and you're used to selling things out full and final, you're never going to see them again. And then you have New Jersey, which they just keep coming back and coming back and coming back. And, it's just something they get used to. I had never experienced that until I moved into, handling Jersey claims. And it's just like, what a headache. Oh my goodness. How do I deal with this? And, you can't just wrap this up and resolve it and, be done with it. You're probably going to see it come back.
Like a bad penny.
Yeah. I like that. So what prompted you to make the change from Synergy Comp over to CCMSI?
So moving from Synergy to CCMSI was mainly, to learn more jurisdictions. Synergy is a great company. I mean, they really taught me how to handle claims effectively. We really became experts through our training. But the jurisdictional scope was kind of limited. So, I wanted to learn the, lay of the land for different states. So it really prompted that move. And two, I changed from a carrier background to moving into TPA world. So we had a couple TPA accounts with Synergy and that I had handled. So I was kind of familiar with it. But again, it was like another big difference is learning, how to handle the TPA cases per your client's recommendations and, their wishes. So, that was another big change, but it did provide that opportunity to, move on into new jurisdictions. So, I just finished my New York license, so I'm sure I'll be moving into New York pretty soon, and also Delaware. I'm going to be learning more of that soon. So, and I've heard New York is kind of like the Wild West of workers' compensation, so that should be interesting.
It's kind of the Wild Wild West for like anything, I think.
Like in California, I hear.
Yeah.
It's an adventure.
Yes. And you moved over, in the midst of the pandemic. So how was that transition for you? Were you remote to begin with?
Yeah, well, we had moved from, in office to remote with the pandemic for Synergy. And then my transition to CCMSI was, to permanent remote, which I prefer. I don't know, everyone has their own, opinions on that, but I just work well, independently. I really am happy to stay as a full-time remote employee. So, but yeah, I will be continuing that into the future.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I was home 4 days a week pre-pandemic, and so when that happened, I was like, what changes that? And except that everyone else was home, and that was annoying. But like Lisa is in our office, and Lisa, you're in the office, I think, most days, I think.
I try to come in a couple days a week just to kind of stay in touch with reality. I think at work, I never thought I could work from home, and then the pandemic taught me that I could work from home. But I'm working more at home than I do in the office, because in the office you have a natural end to your day.
Yeah,
right.
That's the hard part about working from home.
I agree. I think I definitely work more as a remote employee than, in office. And not only that you had that natural end to the day, but you had those natural distractions built in, your employees were like right around the corner. You could go talk to them. And, there was definitely a lot more, socialization going on. Now I just socialize at my desk on Teams, and, it's not the same, but I definitely work a lot more than I did as an office employee.
Oh yeah, for sure. But then I do different things that I think are helpful. Like when I was in the office, a lot of times I would spend most of my time socializing because I'd be so happy to see everyone. I'd plan my lunch or whatever. But at home, I'm like, oh, each day I go out on like a walk with my neighbor and her dog, because I don't have a dog and she does. So I get to walk the dog without having to deal with having a dog.
That's nice.
And like that sort of stuff. I'm like, well, it's like I don't feel as chained to like this space and as super isolated as it could be. But I definitely struggle with the end of the day type stuff when it's like, oh well, it's 5:45. I should transition out to dinner and homework and all those things.
Yeah. For sure. But I will say I appreciate the freeing up of my life too, as a remote employee. It lets me get to the gym in the morning and get home, and I'm at my desk by 8:00. But it freed up that time to do that. It freed up the ability to see my kids more. You're not spending all this time driving to and from daycare and picking them up and dropping off, and they're out with their babysitter in the living room, and you can pop out and see them. If there's an emergency, I'm still here. It really just positively impacted my life as a working parent, and hugely, when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I was actually having that same sentiment like last week. Both my kids were sick and they had to stay home from school. And and they're a little probably older than your kids. They're in like elementary school. But if that happened like with daycare and stuff, like that would just like, it would cause a lot of stress that day. I'd be like, I'd get nothing done. And granted, they're a little bit older now, so they're a little more, they don't need me as much when they're sick, but they still like need me. So, but it just having that, flexibility that I didn't have to like stress that I had to change anything on my schedule. Like I could still appear to whatever's on my calendar for that day, without worrying about, having to cancel because I had to attend something in person.
For sure. And, my daughter has, some health issues that, are temporary, but, there are things that put pressure on your day to day. And, she gets these recurring fevers. So, and you can't send a kid to daycare when they're having a fever. So like you said, it's, a total disruption to your day when you have to go pick them up, and, you can't have them in daycare in that situation. So you're coming home, you have a sick kid, she has them now and she's still able to stay in the comfort of her home. I'm able to be here if she needs me. So, it really just was such a positive impact on, our family life for sure, to move from, in office to remote setting.
Yeah, I do say, as like terrible as COVID was, there are silver linings to it that I think made some positive changes to our, like, all of our, like, how we approach work versus life and the balance of it, and detaching from having to be in an office. Like for like Lisa chooses to be in the office because that's where she feels like that works best for her, but not having the obligation to be in one place versus the other, I think is helpful to everyone's own, like, how they approach work and the best way that best environment they work in for themselves.
Absolutely. I think it's just a matter of personality and what works best for, the person and the individual.
But, and I've talked to a lot of people on the podcast who've made job transitions though during the pandemic. And how was that transition for you? Onboarding, you're onboarding as a fully remote employee with probably everybody else being fully remote. I mean, we've had people onboard at our own firm in that same scenario, and it's got to be so weird. I mean, I went to the office a few weeks ago, and I knew we had these, newer employees, but I'd never seen them before. But it's like, it's just a different environment. So how was it for you?
Yeah, it's definitely different. You feel very much on an island. Here comes a shipment with your laptop and your monitors, and and you're setting up in your home office, and everybody else is remote. So, naturally, when you go to an office in person, you're making friends with other colleagues and stuff. And I would say that the challenge is, making those personal connections through a Teams meeting or a Teams chat. But I think all the differences with the employer and how they handle that, I was made so welcome, and it was such a comfortable transition. They're a really great employer. And, I just had it was fairly seamless aside from those little nuances of, am I actually going to interact with people today, or am I just going to, be on the computer all day? So it was kind of different in that respect, but, I think it's probably going to be, the norm for a lot of claims people moving forward. You're seeing full companies move to full remote now and permanently. So, I think it's just so important on how the employer handles those transitions, and really encourages to, include people, as part of a team when they do come on board.
And I do feel like in claims, it was generally more common to have employees at least be remote some of the time and some fully time. Like, I feel like the claims world was very ingrained in that remote life. So a lot of it wasn't taking on something new, but it still had, I just imagine it has to be bizarre, like, to come on and try to make, virtual friends. It's like, going the AOL chat rooms, like, hi,
yes,
I'm Andrea, I'm new here. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, what's your location? How old are you? Yeah, it definitely was very much like that. Now that you say that, how funny. Like the early days of the internet, going into a chat room.
Like, you want to eat lunch at the same time and chat?
That's great.
I had you come on though to talk about, trends that we're seeing in comp, and, and some of the pain points that you have that come across your desk in the comp world. So, given that we're like, I feel like the last 2 years, so much of the conversation has been COVID, the presumptions of COVID in the comp world. So where do you see things like turning or moving with these COVID claims? Is it going to like kind of fade away into the distance and we're going to have something new arise? Like, what are your thoughts on it?
I think it's definitely slowing down in terms of, how many things are coming across your desk. Because at this point, it's so prevalent. Like, how are you going to prove exactly where this came from, how you got it? That kind of aspect of the COVID claims has certainly dwindled. And I eventually think it's going to just, go away. It's going to become like, oh, I got the flu or the cold, and, do we see claims for that? Knock on wood, I don't. So, I think it's definitely going to go, by the wayside eventually. It's just a matter of getting there. You're still going to have those couple thrown in here and there, but at this point, it's not really something that's a huge concern at the moment.
In terms of remote work, did you see any claims come across your desk where someone's filing a claim because they were working remotely and they fell down the stairs walking to their home office, or anything like that?
Not yet.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, most of my clients, I don't really have claims that would happen like that. They're all like in-person employees. So thankfully, I have not encountered that, but I'm sure that's going to be, a changing part of the landscape as we move forward with, a lot of remote work now. I think one of the biggest things that, is a concern is not so much the COVID anymore, but how, with this great resignation, employers having to rush to fill positions, and with that comes the idea, does, training and safety still take the forefront, or are we rushing those things and having employees in positions where, they might not necessarily have, 100% of the safety and the training that they originally had or would have pre mass resignation from, positions. So, are we having more accidents because of this? And, what are going to be some of the ramifications from that? I think we're going to see some, here and there. I think I probably already have seen a couple of cases where, that has impacted, the claim, and, we're having claims result from those kinds of situations.
I could see, and let me know if this is something that you've seen, like a rise in claims due to staffing shortages. So you have people doing the jobs of not just what they're supposed to be doing, but more individuals. So then you're kind of spread thin, and you might not follow all the procedures, and maybe you don't know the other job so well. So there's some like corners being cut, and I could see issues arising in that. Have you seen that come across?
I think that I have, for sure. That hasn't come out in my conversation with a claimant, but, just given the fact that they're rushing and, they don't have as many employees as they typically would have assisting them with jobs, you're going to have these injuries result. And, that has been the case. So yes, I have seen that, happen, with these claims that are coming in, a couple different ones, in fact. So I think that's really what is impacting claims the most at this point, from what's coming across my desk.
Because I just, and I imagine even like with like the shift work type jobs that even, they're supposed to have breaks every so often. Or at certain increments, I could see some of that falling to the wayside because they did some of the shift work stuff. You need people on the floor, and it's disrupting, production, and then that's slowing things down. And I just see a slippery slope. And I know you can't talk specifics about anything, but is it generally something that you're seeing as a trend?
Yeah, I would say so. And, just tiredness of employees, of having them work, double shifts, to make up for, lack of manpower, and, things like that, are certainly, I think, coming up, and, they're going to impact things, as long as we have this job shortage and people, hopping positions. I think it's definitely just a natural progression of things. And I think you're definitely right. It's a slippery slope. How do we, mitigate these things, when there is such an issue with employment shortage right now?
Yeah. And so like what sort of changes do you think can be made on the employer front? Because you can try to attract new employees, but there's no guarantee they're going to come. So,
right.
What can they do to try to, combat that? There's definitely shortage, but they have demands of trying to, get product or materials or anything out the door.
Right.
It's like a clamp on both sides almost.
Yeah, it is. I really don't know the answer to that question. We have, and it's in every industry too. I mean, you're talking manufacturing, housing and like, food, fast food restaurants, hotel, hospitality, it's everywhere. So I don't know, like there's only so many, sign-on bonuses and promises you can make. I think it's just, is somebody going to be happy doing that job long term? And I don't know how you, as an employer, combat that. I bet a lot of people would like to know the answer to that question because they would be putting it into full force. But yeah, I don't know.
And this is my own, me being naive, but with the Great Resignation, I always just keep asking myself, like, well, what is everyone doing? Like, is anyone else asking that question, or am I the only one who's being like, okay, so everyone's been quitting their jobs, like, are you just living off your independent wealth? What am I doing? Like, what is everyone else doing?
I don't know. And I kind of was tossing that question back and forth with a friend of mine. Did this many people get impacted by COVID? Are they, no longer with us, God forbid? Or, did a lot of the older age, working population retire due to it? And now we're just seeing the shortage from that. But, when it comes to, people my age and like what they're doing, I don't know, like, where are they? What are they doing? I don't really know anybody that is unemployed at this point. And people that, maybe were struggling to find positions in the past, now's their time. But, I don't know. I kind of question the same thing, did we just have like a mass retirement as well? And, now there's all these open spots that we need to fill, or, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think the retirement part was part of it. I think at the beginning, when there was all the extra incentives for unemployment, I think a lot of people are like, well, I'm making more not working, but that's all, like, that's ended. So now I'm like, well, what are y'all doing? What's going on? I mean, like, the ones who retired, I get they're living their best lives, but like,
no.
but I'm not sure about everyone else. And this is just me being very naive. I admit it. I'm naive about these things, but I am very curious.
Right. You would think, because there's no incentive at this point to not move into the job sphere. And there is those incentives too with, sign-on bonuses and, there's so many, higher wages for competitive fields. It is a good question. Maybe I'm naive as well. I don't know where people are at, what they're doing.
I know everyone listening knows how, like, they're probably like, oh, you too. You're so silly. How do you not know?
Comments.
Yeah, exactly. So one thing that's come up a lot during some of these comp discussions I've had is the impact on telehealth on evaluations of injured employees, and like the effectiveness of that. And what are you seeing on your end? And I mean, one theme I've heard that is like, okay, the guided physical therapy, it works on telehealth. Like, that's something that can definitely happen. But then the actual doctor visits, continuing with those on telehealth may be a detriment, because the doctor doesn't actually have, they might have eyes on them, but virtual eyes. Like, there is a benefit for being in the same room with a physician to evaluate your, where you are right now. So what are you seeing?
Right. And that's things that I'm questioning too, as, we go along here. I'm getting claimants that haven't been physically evaluated in 2 years. So what are you really doing? Is this, are we really trying to push to, recover? Are we going to resolve from this injury if you're not being seen for so long? It's just some wild stuff too. Like, in addition to the guided physical therapy, the one claim I had, I saw a virtual reality physical therapy. So I'm wondering if that's something that we're going to see now. People are going to be receiving headsets to do virtual reality movements and stuff like they would with a video game. I don't know.
Have any of these people watched those TikToks of people doing the virtual reality and like falling into walls?
Yeah, I know. And is that compensable now because they've fallen and injured themselves doing virtual reality physical therapy? Oh my God, it's a nightmare. I don't even want to think about it. No.
I mean, I like the concept. I mean, again, maybe like in a year, someone's gonna be like, how dumb are you, Megan, to laugh at this? Like the concept, maybe it makes sense. Like maybe it helps. But I after Christmas and everyone got their VR headsets, there was all those TikToks of like grandma and grandpa trying it on and like falling down or like, running into a wall or something like that.
Right?
So like I see some red flags.
For sure. And that was my immediate concern, because you're not only talking about the expense of, the equipment to go along with it. Will it be rented? Will they have to, will we have to purchase the stuff for them? And, what happens when they, when and if they have an injury resulting from it? It's just a lot of unknown where that's concerned. Thankfully, I've only seen that with one claim, but if one doctor is doing that, you can be sure that another one's going to jump on board too.
Yeah.
The doctor probably patented it, and then now he's going to sell it, and he's going to be part of the Great Resignation soon enough.
Right.
Well, I guess I did recently see, and I'm sure there's another workout thing that does, how there's like that mirror workout thing that,
yeah.
And I think Peloton's coming out with something similar. So I could see something like that being, being beneficial to physical therapy, that you're seeing yourself do the moves alongside like the instructor who's doing it. So you can tell if you're doing it correctly. But I don't think that, I still think someone live is probably, I don't think it's I think it's a recorded person. So you're just like watching your form. So I would think someone like actually commenting, be like, no, you need to do it this way, and adjusting it was probably more beneficial.
And again, in that evaluation piece, how are you evaluating progression when they're just following a video? And that's the things that, I'm sure would come into question from, the adjuster standpoint. Is this really effective treatment for this kind of injury? And is this really going to help progress them throughout their medical treatment?
Yeah, and to evaluate whether or not they're doing the treatment. It's really easy to say, yep, did it today, and not be truthful about that. Whereas like if you have to actually show up and someone has to check the box and do all the exercises with you, it's a check and balance.
Right. For sure. I don't know how they would monitor that, if there's some kind of technology, behind that, where they can say, okay, they did these movements and, here's the effort they were outputting. I think it would be hard to judge that, even with the best technology we have today.
Yeah. Lisa, what have you been seeing on your end on the like physical therapy virtual stuff on the court side? Like, is it, if they're having, are you seeing a lot of claimants get physical therapy on the virtual side, and how is that playing out?
I haven't really seen a lot of physical therapy, but I have seen, telehealth visit with an orthopedic doctor or a family doctor, or even a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And on my end, if I get in Pennsylvania, independent medical evaluations, and I make sure they do them in person so that they lay eyes on them and hands if needed. But my argument with that treatment, if I'm going to a decision on some type of claim, well, my doctor saw them in person, so my doctor must be more credible or more believable, because they actually physically examined them, or psychologically or psychiatrically examined them, as opposed to these doctors who see them from essentially the chest or head up. I mean, how do you evaluate a back injury if you have them stand away from you and they tell you it hurts, and you don't know if they have a spasm, or or tightness or anything like that, or if they're even performing the maneuver correctly. So I argue it in terms of, if we have to go to a decision, a telehealth evaluation is not as good as an in-person evaluation, for the reasons that, we already discussed.
And I think that's valid. I mean, I don't know who we would disagree. I mean, the only way I could see like a psychiatric evaluation, maybe that it can be just as effective on telehealth, maybe. But an orthopedic, I mean, you have to move the body parts.
And I would even question the psychiatric, because they take a look at the overall condition of the person when they go in. What is their appearance looking like? How are they communicating with you? Are they engaging with you when you're speaking to them? And they look at everything when they do those evaluations. So again, I would question, are you really getting the full picture through a virtual or Zoom meeting? A lot of times with, psychiatric, I think it would be very hard to tell, over a video screen, but you might see some things you wouldn't otherwise see in person, show themselves in an actual physical examination.
Yeah. That's very true. And just how like the general demeanor too is
right.
More prevalent in live and in person versus on Zoom, or whatever platform they may be using.
Right.
So what other trends are you seeing, or do you predict are going to be like some upcoming issues that we're going to see in the comp world?
Some other issues and trends. Well, I mean, aside from the ones we've already discussed, I think we still have, the ongoing battle of, compound creams and, pens treatment, excessive treatment with chiropractic care, those kinds of treatments. I think those are just a never ending battle when it comes to the claims world and comp. I think it's just, continuation of like, and strategizing your claim, is now the right time to file UR against this kind of treatment, continuation of this, is it really, reasonable, necessary, is this really affecting, the claimant and moving him to or her to, resolution at this point. So, I think those are just kind of the constant battles with the claims world. You're going to continue to see, the next new thing, where, it's just a higher price and excessive treatment. It's just, there's always something new coming out. So it's just kind of the constant battle.
Yeah.
Andrea, have you seen any claims or requests come across your desk for medical marijuana?
I have not. I had one that was looking like it was going to go that way, and the claimant had kind of casually moved it into the conversation, but never actually proceeded with pursuing that. So I'll be interested to see how that pans out in the future. Do you have any kind of idea on how that's going to go from the litigation standpoint?
I know. I think in New Jersey, there was something that came about where it would have to be paid. And then some carriers were having an issue with, how do you pay it under, federal guidelines?
Mm-hmm.
So that I do foresee still being an issue, but I think COVID kind of pushed that back, onto the back burner.
Right.
But I see that still being an issue. And the opioid crisis, I mean, we have doctors that are prescribing, every month, a certain amount of narcotic pain medication. And then you have, how do you cut them off? And there is still an opioid crisis that COVID kind of, again, pushed to the back burner, but we're still going to have the same issue where we have a bunch of claimants that are on narcotic pain medication for years for sprain and strain injuries that aren't, catastrophic or require require that they be on narcotic medication. So I think that's another issue that's going to come to the forefront is, the medication is not only the narcotic, but possibly the medical marijuana as a palliative measure, to combat the opioid problem that we have.
Right, for sure. And you have those, legacy claims where there's, people that have disabled themselves through, opioid medication and, paying for rehab, the next step and, trying to figure out how to, combat that kind of crisis is, again, I do think you're right. All of those things kind of took the back burner when COVID came on the scene, but I think they're definitely going to move to the forefront again now that we're not dealing with, that so much. We're going to see another spike in those kinds of situations.
Yeah, I definitely think it's like something that I think we all kind of forgot about, or maybe not all, but some, it got overshadowed. And because this was just everything that everyone was talking about for 2 years. And now I think, those problems didn't go away. They just weren't highlighted as much as other things. I think we're going to see more of them come to the forefront. And one thing that, my thing's stuck on my chair. One thing that Lisa brought up in her notes to me earlier, but I'll bring it up here and Lisa can tell me if I'm proposing it incorrectly, but about employers providing transportation and comp claims arriving out of employer provided transportation. Have you seen, what have you seen related to that?
Again, I haven't really seen too much with that. The kinds of clients I have, it just won't come into play. So unfortunately, I don't have too much to talk about with that.
Well, because and maybe this is off base too, but I remember this case that I think Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, it relates to the parking lot case that I think there was employee provided transportation and they had to cross a street where the bus or whatever, the van let them off. They had to cross the street, and then the employee, I think, was hit by a third party while crossing the street. I think that's what happened in that case.
Yeah, in Pennsylvania, there was a recent case where the employees were cleaning, I think, building cleaners. So they would take a train to the train station, and then a van from the employer would come and pick them up. And as they were getting out of the van, they stepped incorrectly and had an injury to their foot or ankle. And they were found to be in the course and scope of their employment, even though they weren't physically at their place of employment yet. And it's a lot of course and scoop. I don't know if you have any course and scoop cases where they're falling in the parking lot, they're on their way to work. In terms of trying to make that call at the onset of the claim, are they in the course and scope of their employment because they are just walking in the door or almost in the door?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've definitely had a couple of those cases, and just relying on defense counsel to help, navigate those things, because there's so many different nuances you can run into. Like you said, if the employer is providing the van transportation from a train station, at that point, it's employer provided. So, how does that play out? It's just this, making sure that you're questioning, those details, because that's totally going to change the outcome of the case, and how you're going to, manage the exposures from there on out. Do we want to do that in Pennsylvania, or do we want to pick up the claim because you can control the medical for 90 days? It's those kinds of things you have to, think about, making those judgment calls, really early on at the onset. I think it's huge in how you, really get to, manage the claim, from that kind of standpoint.
Yeah.
And I think I'm sorry.
No, go
I
ahead.
think that's why it's so important, when you're doing your initial investigation, if you establish, a good rapport with the claimant,
Mm-hmm.
because those issues are so fact sensitive, the more information you can get from the claimant, from the employer at the outset, it helps you make an informed decision. Am I going to pick up this claim now, or am I not going to pick it up? And am I going to be the next Pennsylvania or New Jersey, court case where I'm making or making bad case law from a defense perspective or a claims perspective, or I'm making good case law from a defense or a claims perspective. They're so fact sensitive that it's very important at the outset to get good information.
For sure. And, I think that's absolutely important when you're dealing with the claimants, and especially trying to establish that rapport early on, asking, the effective questions, and, really trying to pull the answers that you need. Having the claimants, be able to share exactly what happened is so key to that, especially when, if you don't have video surveillance or, things like that of the incident, having that buy-in from the claimant, it is so important. So, and that's where I think treating them, with the human element comes into play, and having that empathy when you're talking to them, being as, helpful as you can, guiding through the process, but also doing what's right for the claim, picking up the things that should be picked up, whose absolute responsibility is this, and determining that. And, of course, you always have those claimants that, are claim savvy, and they know, what they're going to do and what steps they're going to take, and you're never going to reach them, but those that, you might prevent from that, being able to talk to them and have that conversation with them early on, I think does so much to, help you throughout the rest of your claim.
That's what I'm glad you said that, because that was actually my next question is, how do you personally work to gain the trust of a claimant who might not be, the most cooperative, or might feel that you're working against them and not with them?
I try to relate as much as possible. I'll say, I can imagine this is, a scary time. You might not be sure, what the process is, and let them know I'm here to help you as much as I can. So, the more we can work together, the better it's going to be. And I really just try to let them know, I get it. I know it's kind of, scary going through the process. You don't know what to expect. You're injured. You might not be feeling your best, and just relating to them, and talking them through things. I don't get too riled up if, they start getting a little bit on the defense. The more they do that, the more I am a calm and relaxing presence, because I'm sure, it's probably agitating to have to deal with so many people. You're getting a million phone calls from people. Half the time I think they wonder who they're even talking to. And, just trying to explain things as best as you can. I think education is so important in everyday life, but also with the claims world, if you're able to educate the claimant, let them know this is who I am, this is what we're doing, this is why I'm talking to you about this, providing that factual background of why we're going through this process, and providing a clear guideway as to here's what the next steps are. Those are vital to being able to deal with the, those kinds of claimants that are, worked up about, their injury that might go bad. And I do think there is some, though, that you're never gonna, you're never going to reach no matter how hard you try. And that's just claims world. But, doing my best to relate to them, I think is, the best thing you can do early on.
Yeah. And them feeling like they have a partner, to help guide them through that. Not that you're going to give them you might be a partner. Doesn't mean like you're going to give them everything that they're hoping and dreaming for, but you are here to help navigate. I think I was talking to someone recently and her theme was humanizing comp claims and, just treating everyone as a human, not just a claimant, so to speak. So, and understanding like how deeply this can affect that individual. So there can be a underlining distrust or skepticism to the process.
Right. Agreed. We always, talk about that, there's those claimants that, they have this, instant distrust of you. But I think the more that you can explain the process and like really actually have those outcomes, it builds their trust as you go along the claim. If, you're answering the phone when they call, answering their questions, and, it's backed up with, the service you can provide them and the help that you can give them, the more that they're going to trust you. It's all customer service when it comes down to it.
And I was going to say, sometimes they provide you with too much information. You become their best friend.
Oh yeah.
About, their dog died last week and, things that you don't really need to know about.
Right.
There's that too.
But that's what all part of, helping to gain their trust. If, if you're a sympathetic ear, you get the good, the bad, and the ugly sometimes.
Absolutely. Sometimes you have those claimants you can't get off the phone and they just call you all the time, and it can be annoying at the time, absolutely, but when you have a good outcome, it's very endearing too. It's kind of like, oh, that guy, okay. Okay, here we go, he's calling me again. But when you're able actually to help somebody, it makes it worth it. But yeah, you have those people that, they just, you talk to them once and then you're best friends, and, they're going to call you like once a day for the next 5 weeks.
Oh, good. Well, so we're almost out of time, but there was a few smaller things I wanted to touch on before we wrap up. One is, if you were looking back on your career now, what sort of advice would you give yourself, like your younger self, knowing what having, gone through, a number of years in this field?
I think just having the grace to learn. You don't need to be an expert all at once. I'm sure that, everybody's new at one point in their career getting into a new job. And especially like this, where there's so many moving pieces, so many laws, so many jurisdictions, I'm sure that people have, had those things where they're like, oh man, why did I ask such a stupid question? Like, why did I do this on this claim? Like, those are the things that you need to learn to have grace with, because it's going to happen. It happens to me today, because you're always going to be learning something new. So just having that grace with yourself to understand that you're not going to be an expert, immediately right off the bat, have a learning curve, and, just get used to, how to ask a question and, how to approach somebody. Those are a lot of the key to claims, I think, is how you're going to approach a situation and how you're going to talk to somebody through it. And not only with claimants, but with your counsel, with, physicians and, all those different people that you're going to talk to in the day to day. but yeah, I mean, everyone's a person. So, I think when I started, I was so intimidated by like having to pick up a phone and call a doctor's office and call an attorney and talk to them. You think that, I'm just this lowly claims manager and there's these, people that are, but you realize they're just human like you are. And I think that was probably, the best thing to learn early on.
Yeah. And then also, I think having a little bit of a thick skin too, because sometimes you're going to call those people and they might not be nice or receptive, and it's not you, it's them.
Right. Absolutely. And if it's a little bit me, I'm still going to blame them. No.
That's fine. No one else will know except everyone listening to this. No.
Right. It's okay. I'll get through it. But yeah, definitely. I think you have to have a thick skin with this job because there's always going to be somebody that you're not going to make happy. I mean, especially as a claims manager, like 9 times out of 10, I feel like you don't make people happy, but it's just rolling with the punches, having a thick skin and, operating on the principles, am I doing the right thing? And if so, there's nothing to worry about.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to touch on before we wrap up, because we were talking about this before we started recording, and you mentioned that you're a big fan of true crime documentaries, and I kid you not, it has come up in I think every podcast I've recorded in the last like 3 weeks. Is it this job? Is that why so many of us like are into that like genre of entertainment, because we like to like pick things apart and figure it out? I don't know. Like
it might be. A lot of my colleagues definitely are into the true crime stuff, and maybe it is, maybe it's the picking apart of a case. I always see those memes on Facebook and stuff about, you're sitting on the couch and be like, I could figure out this crime already, you idiot. Like, and you're sitting on the couch and you've already got it solved, but, you're watching this documentary about it. And it's just like, maybe because we like to investigate. I mean, I think that's the whole thing, is getting to the bottom of it and finding out the actual truth and the fact. Maybe that's why.
Yeah. I mean, I find my biggest challenge whenever I'm watching anything is staying off of Google until I'm done, because I always just want to like start, and I'm like, no, let me go through the entertainment that I decided to sign myself up for, and let me be entertained, and then I can start picking apart. But I have such a hard time like trying to restrain from doing the deep dive like mid in a series.
Oh, right. Absolutely. I'm always I'll start watching something or listen to like a true crime podcast, and I'm Googling the victim or the offender, and finding out what happened before I get to the end of the podcast. Absolutely. I have to like refrain myself as well. It's a conscious effort.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. Because I'm like, and then I'm depriving myself of this. Like, I signed up for this piece of entertainment, so why am I derailing it to like, let me be entertained? Like, just relax.
It's a natural nosiness. And I say that all the time. Maybe I'm nosy and maybe that's why I'm good at claims, because I want all the details. Tell me everything, girl. Yeah, it's definitely like that. So maybe that's why claims adjusters are also good at their jobs, is because they're nosy.
Yes. I think that's a really good point though. I like, it's like, I think, isn't that such a, like, I think that people say it's a negative, like, oh, he or she's so nosy. No, being nosy's good.
Getting into claims, absolutely.
Yeah. Like maybe being nosy and gossipy together, not a good combo, but just nosy and claims, probably good.
I have to know all the details. I mean, don't tell me a little bit, tell me everything. I want to know. I'm here for it.
Tell me more.
Exactly. I'm all ears.
Well, Andrea, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I hope it lived up to the hype that I told you. I haven't had anyone come on yet that told me it was a bad experience and they'll never do it again. So I hope I live by my word.
Oh, it was a great time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea.
I love podcasts and workers' comp. It's go wrong.
Well, and for our listeners out there, always, if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to the Defense Never Rests on Apple Podcasts. And you can also find us on YouTube at TDNR Podcasts. And thank you, Andrea, again for joining us.
Thank you.